a why is a really difficult thing to prove. We've spoken about this all the time.
Yeah.
In science, when you're asking a why question, specifically when it comes to evolution, it is tough because evolution doesn't necessarily do why. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So evolution
Yes.
evolution is obviously a process by which species, I don't want to say evolve, but by which species sort of differentiate into different species due to sort of, competition and
They pass on their strongest genes.
and this is the thing. Every way that we speak about evolution is kind of flawed because you're not wrong when you say they pass on their strongest genes in sort of what you mean, but the idea of it being the strongest gene is a little bit flawed because it's not the strongest. It's what works.
Yeah.
And it's what this is the thing that I find really difficult to explain about evolution, because the way that evolution works is it's not passing on the absolute best thing for the situation. Like the human eye is great, really cool, awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of sucks at its job.
Yeah.
Like there are you could sit down and make a better eye, but that's not how evolution works. Evolution kind of works with what it's got and just does things. It basically just whatever works just continues to kind of
Not
work.
necessarily the perfect thing. It's just what's working the best at the moment.
What's the most
It's kind of
useful?
like-
Okay, so this
Because
is
you think of evolution less as like a process, a thing that's happening, and like evolution's creating things, and more think of it more like evolution's a filter that's like filtering out things that don't work.
So that's
across
kind of the
time.
sort of survival of the fittest idea. I mean,
Yeah.
evolution is the process. So, I mean, I guess how I would explain it is that it's not what works best. It's not doing the best with what you've got necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just whatever makes this is a really like sort of simple and silly way to put it. It's whatever makes you not die before you can make more things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, literally what it is, I think. Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't even need to be. It doesn't even need to be the best way to not die before making more things. There are plenty of
Yeah,
animals that are just ridiculously
Just
annoying.
Circumstantially good enough.
Yeah.
Good enough.
There's a frog that breaks its finger bones, to use as a weapon if it's in danger. Lizards that will
Lose the tail.
totemize and lose their tail if they're in danger. Yeah, because it helps. But
Yeah.
it helps them survive.
Yeah.
You're fastest. You don't have a tail anymore, but you're fastest.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's just sure. Okay.
There's that wombat that poos like cubes, doesn't it? The poo comes out in cubes. It's
Yeah.
another weird thing. I don't
That's
know
just-
what purpose that serves.
And this is the thing. People are always looking for why, and I feel like sometimes with evolution and these specific little things, there's not much of a why. It's more of a just
It
it's just
happened
kind of
that way.
happened.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened, and it's not taking up enough energy to significantly impact sort of what's the word fitness really. So essentially, if something doesn't impact fitness hugely, it's probably not gonna go. It can stick around for quite a bit, if it doesn't take too much energy and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the way that evolution works, right? If we're talking about why did this evolve, we got to really move away from the idea of this is the best possible thing and more this is good enough, or this is just not taking up enough energy to go anywhere, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not to say that things don't have a reason to evolve or a use case, right? Because often things that evolve do have some sort of evolutionary use, right? Because as I said, you need to not take up too much energy to like impact fitness, but also on the other side of that, if something does take up energy, it needs to have a reason to basically be there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That improves your ability to pass on genes.
Yeah. Probably is the reason that your species carried on over other species that might have died out.
Yeah. I mean, as it contributes to it as well,
Yeah.
or not even your species. Literally, just
Yeah.
so even within species, right? This is getting to be a really dense and complicated discussion that I was not expecting. Even within species, if we're looking at different traits between sort of different members of a species, a more dominant trait gives you an edge over your own species. So we tend to think of evolution as being like between species, but a lot a lot of it is within species as well, right?
Yeah.
So if I have a gene, so for example, let's put it this way: if I've got a gene that means that whatever sort of children I have are going to spontaneously combust before they're able to have kids, my genes are probably not going to be passed on, right?
No, probably not.
Whereas if you don't have those genes, your genes are going to be passed on. So that's that kind of competition in between, like sort of within a species. Or for example, if I pass on a gene that makes it harder to, I don't know, digest. Okay, let's say you pass on a gene that makes it harder to digest lactose, right? You pass on a gene for lactose intolerance, but suddenly there's an increased reliance on milk.
Oh no.
My kids are going to have a better chance at surviving in that world than your kids, because my kids can drink as much milk as they want without completely dying.
And mine get tummy aches and have to go to bed early.
Yeah. And when they go to bed early, they ain't making no kitties.
No. They don't get to socialize and they die alone. That's it.
Socialize. That's a new word now.
There you go.
Hey, Mum, I'm going to go socialize.
Oh, I have to go socialize at Katie's house. Sorry.
So you know what I mean there, in that obviously evolution is complex, and if something gives you a slight edge over other members of your species, then that can stick around, and then you get like crazy things where like horns and tusks can grow bigger and bigger and bigger. Antlers can be huge and like take deer antlers take so much energy to have, right? Like it's ridiculous the amount of energy it takes, especially ones that they grow them, then they shed them, and they grow them again next year. Stupid waste.
Yeah.
Stupid waste.
And then they used to fight other males. They used to like prove your dominance and your manliness as a non-man.
Exactly.
But you know what I mean.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And so they use them, and so, but obviously having like bigger and better horns means you're better at will probably
fighting.
be more better at fighting and be able to dominate those other males.
Yeah.
And so it's just this like ridiculous arms race of like, okay, well the one that's got the genes for the best, sort of like the biggest antlers, they're going to pass them on because they're better at fighting, and it just kind of, it can snowball. Basically what I'm saying here is evolution is complex and messy, and there's lots of different reasons that something can stick around. And when we ask why questions in science, often it's not necessarily the most useful question to answer. Or, sorry, not the most useful question to ask, or even really the easiest question to answer. Why questions, I think, are super difficult in science, right? A what question is usually straightforward. A how question is usually like maybe a little bit more complex. And a why question, dear God, that is, because there's so much inference there. You know?
You have to infer a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he enters the realm of, like philosophy and all of like the ethics sometimes. And it depends. There's so much that involves a why. Like, it doesn't have to do with anything that's specifically scientific. It can dwell from everything else.
Absolutely. You're totally right.
Absolutely.
You can very much easily inject your own bias into a why question. And that's something I spotted with a lot of what I was looking at, because a lot of this research that has been done on Western populations. Obviously, you're going to see this. It's going to be slightly different for the study we're going to be talking about today when we get to it. But a lot of the study on beards has been done on Western populations, which obviously hair type and beard types are very different between sort of people in the West, say Europeans and North Americans, compared to say Native Americans and in Asia, like sort of the Middle East, Africa, lots of different hair types. You've got you can have very thick curly beards in sort of I guess sort of the Middle East and in Africa, but in say like Native Americans and I think East Asians and even Europeans, there is less facial hair, or even like less thick facial hair, right? So there's a lot of variation there, and these kind of why questions about evolution, particularly about humans, I think especially with humans, are so susceptible to just that little bit of unconscious bias in there. Just like, oh, why did this evolve? Well, we think this about religion, we think this about all these things, and it's so easy to inject that.